Hi everyone, Angus Campbell here. Thursday the 17th of February 2022. Right, at last we're going to get down to some spannering, and what you've just seen is a clip of me riding obviously the Rocket 3 in early summer last year when I was being filmed by Alex at the Classic Motorcycle channel for a video that was ultimately posted on their channel about my collection of grey-framed 1971 power set BSAs. And as you can see, the bike was being ridden at a reasonable speed. It's about 70 or 80 miles an hour for a high-speed pass. And it was only afterwards when Alex alerted me to the fact that the bike was smoking quite heavily from the right-hand silencer, and for that reason we didn't include it in the video. So I knew that the bike did smoke a little. I'd noticed it when it was ticking over when hot at traffic lights, etc., but it wasn't bad. But this raised a few concerns when I noticed how bad it was from this video. Yes, they all do smoke a little, but they shouldn't really smoke as badly as that. So although the bike was running well at the time, I decided that come the slow season, if you like, over winter, early spring, that we'd undertake some investigations. Now, just to give you a bit of background to this bike, I bought this bike restored, and all I did was tidy up a few things on it to make it a little more original, and to get rid of one or two things that I didn't like, such as plastic tie wraps and things like that. I've never had the motor in pieces, and I have no record of what work was done to the motor when this bike was restored, other than the fact that it has obviously been taken down to a certain extent because the barrels and the cylinder heads have been blasted at some point to clean up the alley. I have had to undertake a few maintenance jobs on the bike. In the early days, we found that one of the tappet adjusted had stripped. The threads weren't very good. Also, I had to replace the primary chain tensioner pull rod because the thread on that had stripped, and also at some point as well, although it wasn't urgent, I did replace the clutch hub and clutch plate because it's making the usual grunting noises when engaging. But other than that, I'm not sure what's been done on the main internals, other than the fact that I know the crank, main bearings and big ends must be good, because the oil pressure on the bike is fantastic, and the oil pressure warning light goes out after a couple of kicks and has never come on when it's really hot on tick over, etc. So I don't intend to touch the bottom end at all, but what I want to do to investigate this excessive oil burning is to undertake a top end overhaul and focus on primarily the bores, the rings and the valve guides. So without further ado, that's enough of the context. Let's get cracking. Right, let's get back to some spannering this year to kick the year off, and here's the victim. I need to do a bit of tidying up in the garage first. Post-Christmas boxes. The bench is an absolute nightmare, so let's get that tidied up, and that's because I've had a few packages arrive, as you can see, and one or two of those are with respect to the next project, so nothing more about that just yet. So I'll move the Lightning over to the right. The Fury SS, that can stay on the bench for now, because the Rocket 3 top end I'll do on the floor. That'll be okay. But just a quick update on the Fury. I've commissioned a company to manufacture the gears. They've taken on the job. It's going to cost a little bit of money, but it's got to be done. I need the gears. So those should be ready within probably another 8 weeks or so. So we're looking at April time, but that's okay. So the Fury's safe and sound on the bench there at the moment, and that's where it'll stay. So without further ado then, let's get a bit of tidying up done. Oh, the other thing to mention as well, by way of another quick update, is the Bandit will be leaving the garage later this month, in a week or two actually. Tony Page is coming over to pick it up, so we'll get a bit of space for the next project, which I hope to unveil March or April time. Right, let's get a bit of tidying up done, and then we can get cracking on the Rocket 3. That's a bit better. Right, put the Fury back in its hole at the back there, and onto the victim. So first jobs to do are remove some bits and pieces. So tank off. All we do with this is undo the two petrol pipes at the taps, and undo the nut in the centre there to uncompress the rubber, and it'll pull straight off with the seat on. Next is to take the carb rack off. The easiest way I find to do this is to remove the filter first, and then that gives you enough room to slide the carbs backwards off the rubbers here and the stubs. The filter is held on by 2 bolts, and you can see the head. You can just about see the head there if the light's right. Let me just point. It's just down there on the gantry. That's 7/16 bolt there. There's just 2 of those. Unscrew those, and that will allow you then to pull the filter off backwards. Sometimes the breather, which you can just, there we go, just see in there, the breather pipe makes it a little difficult, so sometimes you have to take that off. Now on this is what they call the door handle breather. So the way this breather routes, and I'll probably take this side panel cover off in a minute just to show you, is that from the back of the air filter there, it goes backwards, and then it comes this way behind this side panel, down, and then that way, and it hooks onto the motor there. Sorry, it's a little dark. Let's just change that just there. So it goes quite a tortuous route inside this side panel, and that's what's called the door handle. You'll see it, why it's called that, when I take the side panel off. And the next job then is to take the pipes off, which is pretty straightforward on this really. Undo each of the 3 clamps, and undo the clamp on the silencer, and then you can pull the whole set forward slightly, and then you can split the pipes here. So that's pretty straightforward. So let me get on with that, and I'll take that side panel cover off as well to show you the doorstop handle, and then we'll have access then to the top end. Okay, there she is with the carbs off. I've left the rack in one piece, and we'll just leave them tie wrapped out of the way, because otherwise, if you want to take those completely off, you've got to start dismantling the choke cables, which means you've got to get into each of the carbs, and you'll upset all the slide settings. So there's no need to do that. So I'll just leave that hanging there on a tie wrap. I've taken all the exhausts off, pretty straightforward, and obviously the tank. And just to mention that I was talking rubbish earlier on. With respect to the tank mounting on this, it's actually fixed down by, I don't know what you call this part actually, but this is firmly bolted down on the top with the nut. It's not a compressed rubber that I mentioned earlier, where I was thinking about the twins and the singles. And the only other thing to mention as well is with respect to the air filter. This is the back of the air filter. The original Rocket 3 ones had a nub here for the breather hose to clamp onto. You won't find those now, I don't think, because most people think they're the same as the Tridents, which they're not, where the Trident had a smaller air breather hose that's got a lip on it that actually fits into this back plate, whereas the Rocket 3 ones don't. They have to have this nub. This isn't necessarily the correct back plate, but all I've done there is actually Araldited in an old, I think, socket that was exactly the right size. So a bit of a sort of a make do, but it works well. And then just to finish off, let me just show you the there it is. This is the breather hose. So you can see it's a bit of a tortuous route. Just from where are we? Here's my finger. The back there, in, across, down, back across at the bottom, and into the engine here. So it is actually almost like a door handle. And not a lot of the Rocket 3s have got those fitted now, but that should be the correct way of doing it anyway. But anyway, whatever you've got fitted, as long as you've got a breather pipe on there, then that should be fine. Right, next thing then is head steady off. So the two head steadies are clamped onto sort of an extended stud on the top of the rocker boxes, but on the frame here there's just one nut and bolt that goes all the way through to hold both these in. Let's take this off, take that off. I won't need to take off the oil cooler. I can usually manage to get the exhaust rocker cover off without disturbing that as well, so most of it's pretty accessible. We'll just label up the ignition leads, left, centre, right. I can never remember which is 1, 2, 3, which end it starts from, but anyway I just do left, centre and right. And then we'll start taking the rocker boxes off. Now with respect to those, then most of the head studs have to be taken out on each side. Obviously the rocker covers, but inside the rocker covers on this side of the boxes there's the 3 Allen screws. You mustn't forget those, you'll never get them off without that. And then we ought to take the rocker boxes off, and then we ought to take the push rods out, push rod tubes, and then we can attack the head. But let's just do one thing at a time. Right, making progress. So just to show you the position of the 3 internal Allen screws, one left, middle and right, which secure the rocker boxes to the head at the back and also at the front on the exhaust side. I've taken out all the head bolts, so there's the main head bolts, of which there are 8, and these do come out okay. They just clear the frame, so that's fine on each side. The 2 on each end are just purely to secure the rocker box onto the head. These aren't actually head bolts themselves. But once we've got everything out, I'll bring you back when I remove the remove the rocker boxes, and then that'll just leave us the 4 head nuts, 2 on each side, and then we should be able to take their head off. I've just brought you back a bit earlier than planned actually. I've not undone the Allen bolts on the front rocker box yet, but this one was falling off actually, so that means that one of the valves must have been depressed when we were undoing it. So we should be able to just lift that out now, carefully, so that we don't damage push rods. Here we go. So we left the push rods and the push rod tubes behind. And the seals, the white seals are still in there on the gasket, but we'll be using new gaskets and new seals anyway. But anyway, that looks okay. Right, so that's ready then for the head to be removed. So all I've done since loosening all the final 4 nuts on the studs is just to tap the head with a rubber mallet on the inlet stubs on each side and on the exhaust stubs on each side, and the head's loose. So let's take it off. Just have to slide it up over the studs. Here she comes. There goes. Don't worry about that, that's just a push rod tube that I couldn't get out, and another one's just come out on the exhaust side. Nearly there. Come on, baby. There we go. She's off. Just gently slide her across so we don't damage anything on the studs. There across. And there we go. We'll do a closer inspection on the bench once we've removed the valves. So let's just put that on the bench, and then we'll have a quick scan of the pistons while we're in this position before we take the barrels off. Right. Now the first observation from my perspective is that the piston crowns are all a bit black, but I do deliberately run these a little rich, so it's a little cooler. Right, that's the push rod tubes retrieved. So let's get the torch. And have a quick look. Well, there doesn't appear to be any play or slop in the piston at all. What bores I can see are beautifully smooth. But look to me as though they've got the remnants of some
honing marks, possibly, or rebore. The thing is that I bought this bike restored, but I did quite a bit of tidying up, and the one or two things, as I've already said, that I found wrong with the motor. But I've never had the head off it, only the rocker boxes in the past to try and cure the dreaded normal pushrod tube oil leaks at the base, which failed on the left front. So I've never looked inside here, but I have to say it's looking pretty good to me. But let's just turn the motor over and we'll have a look at that, at the bore of that right hand pot. I mean, it's absolutely, I can't believe that. There's a negligible play in that piston, almost as though it's too tight. So you just wonder if it has been rebored. We'll try and get some part numbers off one of the crowns. I can just about see the part number on the crown of the centre piston, which seems to be less coked up than the other two. But first of all, we'll just turn it over and we'll just have a look at the bore on the right hand pot, because that potentially is the culprit with respect to the smoking. But obviously, if it's not the bores, then it could be the valve guides. Yeah, this is exactly the same as the other two. There looks to be either, I mean, the bores are certainly mirroring up, but on close inspection there are what look to me like basic honing marks that haven't quite maybe run in yet. And bearing in mind, I've done about 1,000 miles on this, so that might figure. Right, next thing, let's get the centre one up. Right, that's good. Okay. Little tiny bit of play in that, but not what I'd call excessive. Just move this one up again. Try the right hand one again. Okay. Yeah, we have got some right. But not bad. Let's have a look at that left hand one again. Oh yeah, that's okay, yeah. So the pistons do move, they're not too tight. But we are going to take the barrels off, because as we've got to this stage, then it would be foolish not to do that, to check the state of the pistons, but also to see if there's a ridge at the bottom of the barrels on the bores, and also to check the piston rings, because obviously the other thing that it might be is a broken piston ring, or maybe piston ring clearance is lined up. But next thing I'll do is I'll just clean off that centre section piston crown with a bit of wire wool or something, and see if we can get that part number to see if it's an oversized piston. Right, let me try and show you. There you go. You can quite clearly see on the far side of that bore that there are some form of boring or honing marks on there. But the next thing is that I've got the number off that central piston, and it's 709741. and according to the parts book, standard. So I think this has been honed with probably a new set of piston rings. So the barrel's going to come off, so we can actually measure up the pistons within the bore, but also the piston ring gaps. I mean, it might be alright, and to say that might not be the issue. The other thing as well, just initial sort of macroscopically, is that the head gasket doesn't appear to have been blowing, and if we have a look at the if we have a look at the head itself, I mean, this has obviously been apart because this head's been blasted. A bit of evidence of it there. So this is left. Right is fine, but there is some evidence of blow-by just there, look. And similarly, a bit round there, where there's a bit of carbon build-up. Is that carbon? Or is that burnt silicon? Okay, so let's get the barrels off, and to do that, these probably are going to be a little more difficult to remove, but we've just got to undo the base nuts, of which I believe there are 10, something like that, 8 to 10. Anyway, we'll get those off, and then we'll need to give this a bit of a tap in a secure place where we don't damage the fins, because that's the usual problem. And also what we need to ensure is, as we raise the barrels, that we pack clean rags, etc., in around the con rods. We don't want those clattering against the crankcases, and similarly we want to capture the cam followers. If they fall out of the barrels, we don't want those dropping into the crank. So thanks for reminding me about that, Matt. But let me get these base nuts undone, and then we'll take it from there, and I'll set you up again as I remove the barrels. Right, not much to see, but got all the base nuts off, and not too badly. They're a bit awkward to do. They're 1/2 inch on this, and I thought that actually the standards are 3/8, because it was a little difficult to get the ring spanner on some of them without a bit of a fight. So I'll check into that. But anyway, I've given it a good whack on each side, evenly across the fins with a rubber mallet, and that has actually broken the barrel loose. It is actually freed up from the base gasket. So what I'll need to do now is tie off the cam followers. I usually use an elastic band on the top of them to prevent them falling through, and we'll lift the barrel off, and I'll save you the swearing and cursing doing this, because it's going to be a bit of a finicky job running around this without banging the camera, etc. So let me get on with this, and I'll bring you back when I've successfully removed the barrels and hopefully kept all the cam followers too. It's no great shakes if they do fall down, to be honest. I've got the base plate, the sump plate off, and we can always grab them with I think a magnet if we need to. But anyway, we'll take all the usual precautions and get this barrel off now. Success, managed to get the barrels off and rags stuffed in on the way. Not too much trouble. I did drop one cam follower, but I managed to retrieve it with the old telescopic magnet with the light on the end. It's a fantastic bit of kit, that. No problem at all. Right, so here we are, barrels. First thing to notice is that in line with the observation that there's a bit of blow by here, then there is some evidence on that gasket, cylinder head gasket, which I didn't notice on the bike, but in this better light you can see it's definitely been blowing across here. But this is the front, squared off, rounded back, so that's not the right hand cylinder, that's left and centre. But first thing I noted on the pistons was that a little bit of scoring, but not bad, and the rings are okay, i.e. not broken. But I've noticed on these bores, let me see if I can show you, they're not scored as per se, but look at these marks, they're almost like pits that have been attempted to be honed out. Not so bad actually on the right hand one, although there are some there. The left hand one is the worst. Look at that. Now you can't feel them, but they're definitely there, and that's the worst part on the this will be the left hand. In fact, you can see them better without the light. Look. Now if we turn the barrels over, let's try and do this one-handed. The followers out of the way. You can see that these, sorry about the light, these have been honed. You can see where the bike's run itself in, and there is a slight ridge discernible, so that's going to be a thou or two, maybe a bit more, but not all the way around, front and back as you'd expect with the rocking motion of the piston. But certainly, just see if we can see any pits or anything. What's that there? Is that? Oh, it's just a piece of muck. Okay. But I mean, just makes you wonder if the bike's been stood a while. A bit of scoring on that one. The bike's been stood a while, and these have been honed out. We will try and measure them up. The next thing really, the telltale, will be ring gap. So we will take the rings off the pistons next. And also what we'll do is remove the valves and see what where we've got in the guides, because that's the other telltale. So I think the bike's been fine since it was honed and maybe re-ringed, but it just makes you wonder whether the piston to bore gap and maybe the ring gap is too big. Certainly looking at you know, the state of that bore there, something's happened there. It's almost as though a piston might have stuck if it's been stood for a while. Do they look like ring marks? So I think a rebore is going to be in order. But anyway, there we are. An initial look-see and maybe some indication of one diagnosis anyway. There may be more that might contribute to it burning a bit of oil, albeit not necessarily on the cylinder that we were expecting. But having said that, if that cylinder's been honed out a bit more than the others to clean it off, and the ring gap is greater, then that's going to be a telltale sign as to too. So we'll leave this as part one at this stage, and we're all lined up now with a part two, where we'll try and measure up the pistons and the bores, but also we'll take the rings off the pistons, put them in the bores, measure the gaps, and we'll also then remove the valves, number those up, and see how sloppy those are within the guides once we've taken the valve springs off. Right, we'll leave it there, everybody. Thanks very much for watching. Finally, we're doing some decent spannering this year, cracking on, and I'll see you all again soon. Thanks, everybody. Cheers. Bye-bye.